Hello, hello, hello. I am back, baby, and I'm kicking things off with a very personal behind the scenes episode because why not? It is radical disruption, and there would be nothing more on brand than a very personal behind the scenes episode. Now, if you are wondering, which you probably are, why are you back? Why now? Why all of the things? Why? I promise I will break that all down in next week's episode. But I do want to note before I dive into today's episode and my exciting topic and all of the things that I have prepared to share, I do want to make a note, which if you are not new around here, you've probably already noticed this, but if you are new around here, welcome. This is going to be the new normal for you. But if you aren't new around here and you have listened to past episodes, you have already probably noticed that there was no intro, and you will notice that there is no outro at the end of this podcast episode, meaning that there's no like fancy, like pre recorded message saying, like, hi, I'm Maya Nicole, Radical Disruption, and there's like fancy audio and like blah, blah, blah. All that's all of that's fancy. It is fancy. All of that is fantastic, but I've decided that in order for me to stay consistent with these podcast episodes, I need to set aside my need for perfection and like my striving for perfection. And that means that the fancy intros, the fancy outros, all of that good stuff, it's all going away. It's not that there's anything bad with those things, but also at the same time, like, if I'm being completely honest with you, like I'm whispering because this is a secret. It's actually not a secret, but if I'm listening to podcast episodes, I just skip past that anyways, and then I just don't listen to the outros anyways. So the odds are that people are not doing that for mine anyways. But the vibe that I really want for this podcast is I want you to feel like you're sitting down and actually chatting with me. Like if I were talking to you and you were my business bestie, which you are if you're listening to this, I want you to get the unedited, raw, realistic version of how I would talk to you about the whatever topic it is that we're talking about. And so if I were to send you a voice message, that's what I want this to feel like. And so inside of a voice message, I can't edit things. There's going to be dead space. There's going to be time for me to think about things. There's going to be things where I'm like, "Oh, I said that and now we can't go back because I said it and here it is." And so I just really want it to be like exactly how I would tell you if you were sitting down in front of me and we were chatting. But of course, since that's not an available option, we're going to go with the voice memo option. So that's how I really want these podcast episodes to feel now and moving forward, is more of that casual, unedited type of vibe. And so you will notice that there isn't always going to be perfect audio. I might even be recording some of these episodes while I'm on a walk. And so you might hear the wind because I'm in Idaho and it's really windy here in Idaho. And it might just be like, again, like I'm on a walk and I'm voice messaging you. And that's how I really want it to feel. And there's going to probably be dead space sometimes. And all of that good stuff. So, setting aside the need for perfection and really just choosing the path of least resistance for me, because wow, for me, because I know that this podcast is so powerful, and it's not only really helped me in my own business being able to share through these podcast episodes, but I know it's impacted so many people who are listening. And so I want to continue to put these out, but I need to not even set a boundary, but I just need to get out of my own head and just say the thing. And so if I know that I'm talking to my business bestie through a voice memo, I know that I don't need it to be perfect. And the last thing I'll say here about format is not necessarily today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different just because it has been 7 months since I have recorded an episode. And I do want to give you some context as to what's going on here and moving forward. But moving forward, the episodes will be around 5 to 15 minutes. And the reason behind that is I am in a season of life, and I know that this is the season of life for so many of you as well. It's busy. I'm busy. Life is busy. Kids are busy. Hobbies are busy. All of the thing. There's just a lot that is going on. And when I have the time to listen to a podcast episode, it is not 45 minutes or 60 minutes that I have like this time allotted to like listen to these episodes. It's generally like, oh, I have 5 minutes here, or I have 20 minutes here, or, I'm sitting down and breastfeeding. Like I have 10 minutes here that I can listen. Like I want these episodes to fit into the nooks and crannies of your life, and I also don't want you to feel like you didn't get anything out of the episode if you only did listen to 5 minutes of it. Because if we're being real, in those 45-minute episodes, 60-minute episodes, the good, juicy meat and potatoes of the episode doesn't actually happen until like halfway through or at the end of it. And so if you listen to 5 minutes and it's a 60-minute episode, that's going to take you a lot of minutes to get through that entire episode. And you're also going to not be able to take action on anything until, a week, if not 2 weeks later, depending on how frequently you're going to be listening to that podcast episode, right? And so I want this to be like you're hopping in, there's no intro, I'm just jumping straight into the topic, and I want to give you something actionable that you can just implement into your own business, or something you can think about, or something that you can strategize with, or maybe a mindset energetic shift. Like, I just want it to be so actionable, so juicy, so value packed in those 5 to 15 minutes. And it is going to be something that can fit into that nooks and cranny of your life, where if you are in the pickup line picking up your kid from school, you're probably not sitting in that line for 30 or 45 or 60 minutes. It's probably like 5 to 10, 15 minutes, right? So you can fit in a podcast episode there. Or if you're listening, or not listening, if you are in the shower, you could listen. I listen to a lot of podcast episodes while I'm in the shower. But again, wherever little nook and cranny of your life that you can fit in these episodes, that's what I am strategically creating these episodes for. And so you don't also feel like you're behind or feel like you're not getting anything out of it. So it's going to be, again, just straight to the point, the meat and potatoes of uh what I would have said if I had to condense a 60-minute episode into 5 to 15 minutes. So that is the format moving forward. Now, quick life update, because it has been 7 months since I have recorded an episode. And while it has felt like it was yesterday that I was recording episodes, it also has felt like 10 years since I recorded episodes, because a lot has happened. So, the Spark Note version of my life over the last 7 months is I gave birth. It was a home birth. It was fantastic and so peaceful, magical, all of the things. If you need me to convince you to have a home birth, just shoot me a direct message or an email. I will. It is life changing in so many ways, but birth just in general is, and babies are. And so my second baby is Ruth. She's now 4 months old, so she's no longer a newborn anymore. She's starting to roll over, starting to use her hands. It's really, really fun. And Remy, which is my first baby, she just turned 2, also not a baby anymore, I guess, which is wild. How in the heck do I have a 2-year-old? I honestly don't know. And if I talk about it too much, I will start crying. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is that I finally have an actual office. I mean, I've had an actual office for the last 4 years running my business, but like this one's like decorated and like actually like feels like an official place to sit down and work. And if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm like throwing my hands out in the air. And if you're not watching me on YouTube, you're like, what are you doing? You're probably not wondering what I'm doing, but I'm showing you in the air the beautiful decorations behind me, and I have like these cute like pin boards on the wall, and like this cute like see-through transparent whiteboard. And anyways, it just makes me happy to walk into my office and sit down. And I genuinely do believe that like if you enjoy the place that you sit down to work, it makes work a lot more happy. Not to say that I don't love my business, but like it just makes me that much more excited to like get in here and film. And like when I see the light coming through in the morning, and like anyways, it's a vibe is all I'm saying. Another thing that is super exciting that has happened in my business over the last 7 months is that I got flown down for free to California for an interview with Kajabi, which is so fun. And last thing I'll say is Christmas is in full swing in my household. I actually started decorating on Halloween. I was in between creating costumes. Creating, yeah, I guess I was creating. I was making costumes for my 2 babies, and they were Bluey and Bingo. So we were Bluey's family for Halloween. But I was making those costumes. Like in between doing that, I was like running over here, and then I was like also literally stringing Christmas lights on the little fence outside my house. My husband's like, "It is Halloween," and I'm like, "I know, but it feels like I'm feeling the holiday spirit already." And the next day after Halloween, I took down all my Halloween decorations and moved in all my Christmas decorations. So that is my quick life update for you. But let's dive into this episode. And to give a little bit of context as to why I wanted this topic to be the topic that I bring as the first episode back, it's been a conversation I've been having everywhere, or at least it feels like I've been having it everywhere. I've been having it in my personal life. I've had it with my clients, a lot with my clients recently, and in my direct messages, in Q&A boxes on my Instagram stories, and my broadcast channel. Like, I mean, I feel like this conversation is happening everywhere, and it makes sense because I am postpartum with baby number 2. And so the topic of balancing like kids and work and entrepreneurship and marriage, like that is a huge conversation that's happening. And I also think that it's happening a lot because people know that I do share so transparently, and they are just genuinely curious what that actually looks like in my life because not a lot of people talk about it. And this was actually a huge struggle for me when I originally was trying to decide if I wanted to have kids. I grew up my whole life wanting to be a stay at home mom, always wanted to have kids, started my business, started being really successful in my business, which I'm so grateful for. But that success and like the fulfillment that I felt through my business, because I genuinely love my business so much. Like, if you do not wake up every single day excited to do what you are doing, then change that. That's all I'm going to say there. But I just found so much fulfillment in my business where I was like, do I actually want to have kids? And another part of that too was like, if I have kids, is that going to take away from my business? And like, what does that whole dynamic look like? Because there's not a lot of people that actually talk about that. You know, a lot of people that I look at in the online space who are fantastic, but like people that are like industry leaders in my industry, for example, are number one, a lot of them are male, but they don't have kids. And they're very, very high achievers, obviously, because they're, you know, the top people in the industry, and that's all fantastic and whatnot. But I'm all this to say that I didn't really have a lot of examples of like, can you actually build a very, very successful business and be a really great mom and like have this life that has like is full of memories and you're super present, but also you have this amazing business that's like making a huge impact and making huge amounts of money and like all of that. Like, can those two things coexist? And that was really, really, really a struggle for me until I found my mentor. And she was a really great example to me. And then I also found a lot of other people too. Like, I literally started like seeking out, like, can I find female entrepreneurs who are the sole income provider, or, you know, are running a successful business. Maybe they're not the sole income provider, but are also moms too at the same time. And Jenna Kutcher was one of those people that I talk about all the time on the podcast. I just think she's super, super amazing. And she is that sole income provider, and her husband is a full-time parent, and she has 2 kids, maybe 3 kids now. I don't like fully keep up with her, but I just think that she's really awesome. Anyways, I started to seek out all these different examples. All this to say that I never planned, and I don't know if any entrepreneur actually plans this, but like growing up, I always thought that I was going to be a stay at home mom. And my husband, Gabe, he always thought that he was going to be the income provider. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when the idea of what you thought you were going to be your whole entire life is not what you end up being, and like the roles are actually flip flopped in your marriage, it does create an interesting dynamic that you both have to work through. Uh, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, Gabe and I are so grateful for my business, and we're so grateful for the way that our life is right now and the freedom that we have, and like how amazing it is that he gets to be at home full time with our kids, which he is right now. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. But I just want to make it so clear that we're so grateful for that. But also at the same time, like, while things can be so good, that doesn't necessarily always mean that there can't be a struggle and a desire for, I don't want to say a desire for something else, but, you know, openness for there to be a season where things do change. And to give like the spark note version of what our marriage has looked like, Gabe supported me full time. So he was the sole income provider. Well, I don't want to say sole income provider, but definitely the main income provider for the first 2 years of our marriage. And that was when I was like doing network marketing and when I was also starting my business too, what I'm doing right now. And it was just when I wasn't making a lot of money, right? And it was not enough money for me to live off of, and definitely not enough money for the both of us to live off of. And so he was working 1 week on, 1 week off, and sometimes even a week and a half to 2 weeks on and 1 week off. And it was just really, really hard on our marriage. And so when it got to the point where my business could actually support us full time, I was like, yes, let's have you step away and give yourself some space to figure out, the business that you want to start. Cause he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad has a little bit of entrepreneurship background, but his dad is definitely an entrepreneur. And so we both have that like in our blood. And we're like, oh yeah, like, yes, step away for a little bit of time to figure out what you want to do, the business that you want to start. And so 6 months later, he ended up starting some franchise stores, which I actually talk about a lot more in depth. And I actually brought him onto the podcast episode to talk more about that. So I'm not going to dive deep into that because that's like a whole other thing. But I'll link that episode down in the show notes so you can go listen to it if you're interested. But he did that. So he opened 4 franchise stores and they had plans to open, I think, 11 franchise stores. That was over like a year and a half, maybe 2 year period of time. And so he was doing that. I don't want to say like full time, but honestly, he was probably working just as much as I was, but he was working from home a lot. He did travel back and forth because some of the stores were, one of the stores was like 45 minutes to an hour away from us. And then 4 of the stores, I think, were in Texas. I shouldn't say I said that as if I didn't know that they were in Texas. I knew that they were in Texas, but I didn't know if it was 3 or 4 stores. Is all I'm saying. But he would travel a little bit that way, so that was also at the same time when a few months after he started doing that is when I had Remy. And so he did a little bit of like that type of work, where we kind of just navigated that role back and forth where he was working and I was working. And since obviously like both of our businesses were very flexible, if he was like taking a call, then I would take Remy, or if I was taking a call, then he would take Remy, and like just figuring that out back and forth. And I wouldn't say that there was like a perfect balance there. It was just every single day looked different, just depending on what our businesses needed from us and what our personal life needed from us. Um, and so that's what things looked like there. But ultimately, that business ended up not being good. We lost like $700,000. I say that so casually now. Again, go listen to the podcast episode, the one that's linked down in the show notes if you want more information on that. But that ended up closing down, moving on from that. So it's been about a year now since he has been doing that, and he picked up stocks, so like doing stock market stuff. He was doing day trading there for like, I want to say he was doing day trading after. So like after he closed down the franchise businesses, he was doing day trading for like 4 to 6 months. He's still doing stuff in the stock market, but I don't think is day trading. Don't quote me on that because I don't know all of the details of the stock market. But he's taking the money that I make and investing it into the stock market, and then he also manages our investment property that we have. And so he is doing other things, but he's definitely not working full time. I would definitely consider him more of the full time parent for sure. And I'm the sole income provider. While our investments in the stock market, as well as our investment property, do make money, just in relation to how much money I personally make in my business, it is not a lot of money. But that being said, we continue to invest, and obviously those investments continue to make more and more money on a monthly basis, and he is managing all of that. So it definitely will get to a point, probably within even in the next year, where that is more of like a part-time job for him. If he wants that to be. And so that is what he is currently doing, but that is very flexible. He can do obviously that from home. And so he is the full time parent for sure. And so that has, like I was saying earlier, brought up a lot of just interesting conversations in our marriage because it's not the dynamic that we ever thought that it would be. And I do think that there is a season in the future where he is the main income provider. Not, I wouldn't say he would ever be the sole income provider, just because I will always have the desire to run a business. Maybe it might not always be this business, if we're talking like 10 years down the line. That being said, though, like I love entrepreneurship. I love, I don't, I just, I love a lot of things to do with like running a business and like conversations and impact and all that good stuff. But that's a conversation for another day. But what I find so interesting is, when you look at people on Instagram who are running these massively successful businesses, and I do want to get specific here in the sense of like these people are moms. How does that dynamic look? Do they have child support, or are they literally a full-time mom and they're working their business in the nooks and crannies, which is totally a possibility. Like, I don't want you to feel like you can't scale your business if you're listening to the podcast episode right now and you are a mom and you don't have support of any kind. Like, I don't want you to feel like you can't scale your business, because that is not the case whatsoever. But I do think that there's definitely not a lot of transparency around like the support that people are getting behind the scenes. And it's not to say that that discredits anyone's success. That's not the case whatsoever. But I do think that it is interesting, because I 1000% thought that even though these, examples that I was looking up to, Jenna Kutcher is a little bit different, just because I did look so deeply into her story and also read her book enough to know that her husband had, she had like, I say air quote, like retired her husband. So her husband is a full-time dad. So I knew that one. But a lot of the times when I'm looking at these people who are moms who are, making multi six figures, seven figures, even, some of them even eight figures, they are promoting that like they are a mom and they're a present mom and they're making memories, which is like, I 1010% believe that. And I believe the amount of income that they're making. But that being said, like, it always has left me questioning, like, but like, when are they working? How much are they working? What does that whole like work actually look like? Like, is their spouse helping out? Like, do they, is their spouse also working full time? Like, or do they have a nanny? And like, what does that all look like? And so, that's really why this episode exists, is because I've had these questions, and like, I've always thought that I've always wanted to sit on the sideline and ask questions to someone like me, who is running a successful business and is also, a mom, and be like, but how are you doing it? And like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis, in terms of like, how are you balancing that role with your spouse, or is there a nanny, or like, what does that look like? So for me personally, if you already didn't get this, I just want to lay this out, very simply. Gabe is a full-time dad right now. I work anywhere between 15 to 20 hours a week. And so obviously I'm not working a lot of hours on a day-to-day basis. And those hours are generally broken up over like a 9-hour period, because I will be like breastfeeding Ruth, and then I'll like come back and work for like 30 minutes, and then Remy will have a meltdown, and like I'll go out and help with that. And so it's not like I'm sitting down for 4 hours and like, see you later, kids. There is a lot of like moving in and out of the office, which I'm so grateful for, that I had the ability to do that, and to like basically, like, I honestly feel like I'm there for basically everything on a day-to-day basis. But Gabe is definitely the one that is, full-time watching the two kids. And that is what this season looks like right now. He does have the stock market investing, and eventually I do see him starting a business, because we've talked about that a lot. But just having lost so much money, in the prior business, we are kind of just trying to keep things mellow for right now, and like build up our investments and do things that way, instead of building another business. And also just because like postpartum is so crazy, and like figuring out how to just navigate life in general with two kids is really crazy. So that is the season that we're in right now. But I do want to share some other perspectives, not perspectives, but like some things that I've seen from other clients, and like how it's working for them, as well as for like my coach. So my coach, I actually had no idea. So she's another one where I had to literally ask her. I was like, so what does this like look like for you on like a day-to-day basis? Like, I had to ask her, I was like, does your spouse work? Like, do you have a nanny? Like, what does this all look like? Because she doesn't talk about that, like, on the front facing of her business. Now, if, of course, if anyone asked her that question, like, what does it look like, she's of course going to be so transparent. um but again, it's just one of those things where it's like, no one is talking about this like on the front facing part of their business. Like, how are we supposed to know what that actually looks like for people who are, for me, if I'm looking to scale my business, like, I want to set realistic expectations for myself, and like figuring out the best way to navigate things in my own marriage. And like, I love to look at other people for examples. So She does have a nanny who comes, I think, 5 days a week from 9 to 3, and her husband does also work full time. And then one of my clients, on the other hand, that I worked with earlier this year, I only take 2 one-on-one clients a year, but one of them, the last one that I worked with before I closed off my client, before I closed off my one-on-one coaching for 2025, she is currently pregnant and she has another baby girl. I don't know how old her baby is. I want to say like 5 or 6 maybe. She goes to daycare from Monday. She goes to daycare Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Wow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So she doesn't have daycare on Fridays, and she goes from, I want to say, 9 to 4. And so those are the hours that my client will work. She'll work Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4, and then she'll drop her baby off at daycare, and then she'll pick her baby up, and then she takes a full Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. And so that is what works for her. And so basically all this to say that no one is lying. I'm not trying to call anyone out by saying that they're not talking about the child care support that they are getting. That is not the case whatsoever. I really am just sharing this to, like, because I've been so interested and so surprised, honestly, too, by some of the people that I have had conversations with over this last year, who I didn't think that they had any type of, childcare support, and they totally did. And, like, just asking, like, what that looks like in terms of, like, their marriage. Like, one of my other friends too that I was actually thinking of, her husband works full time, and then she also is running her business full time as well, and she has a nanny that comes in a few times per week. And so that was something that, like, up until this year when I was asking her about it, I had no idea that she even had a nanny that was, like, coming in to help. I just thought that she was totally, like, managing it all herself, which is fantastic. Like, there are people that are totally doing that. But again, I just thought that it was such an interesting conversation that I've been having with obviously my husband, but also with so many people in my space and in my community over these last few months, where I just wanted to bring this to light and just let you know that, like, it's okay to ask for help. And for a really long time, I thought that, by asking and having Gabe at home full time, that, like, I was failing in my business because I couldn't run my business full time and also be a full time mom. And what I've realized is that when I ask for help, it actually allows me to be a better mom because I can be more present in the moments that I do have with my kids, instead of thinking about, oh, well, how do I get this post up today? Or, like, what do I need to do this? Or how do I respond to these emails? Or what about this situation? Like, all those things I know would be happening if I didn't have support, because I would be literally trying to work my business while also watching my kids. And if that is the season that you were in, I'm not dissing on that whatsoever, but I just want you to know that, like, it's okay to ask for help, and help is going to look different for every single person. It doesn't have to look like you, yeah, bringing your spouse home and having them be a parent full time. It might be hiring a nanny. It might be hiring even just a babysitter to come in, 1 to 2 hours a week. I actually have another friend who they do, like, co-babysitting. So her and one of her other friends, they hire a babysitter for both of their kids, and so they split what they like the cost of it, and they have that person come for like 3 hours. I want to say like 2 times a week or something like that. And so that's what works for them, and that works for their budget. Again, it could be like the daycare situation. And also too, like, you might be looking at people on Instagram who do have kids and who are very, very amazing present moms and parents and dads, whatever it is, and their kids might be in school full time. And so, like, it's like you just can't compare where you're at versus where someone else is at. You just never know the full picture there. But also to support, like, it might not be hiring a nanny. It might not be childcare. It might not be something like that. It might be having groceries delivered. It might be having someone mow your lawn. It might be having someone clean your house. Like, it might be getting support in other areas of your life where it does free up time for you to work your business. Um, and with all that being said, too, like, I totally work my business in the nooks and crannies of my life. Actually, right now, while I'm recording this episode, I'm in, like, I want to say like 4 days out of, 4 out of 10 days in of being a solo parent to two kids. Gabe has been gone in Mexico doing a dirt bike race, and he'll be gone for another 6 days, which is a long time. Like 10 days is a long time. And I'm also in the middle of a launch right now and also prepping for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And like, this is like my literally November is like my most hectic season. And so I am like totally embodying like working my business and the nooks and crannies of my life. It is literally 10 o'clock right now. I put the kids down to sleep and I am recording a podcast episode before I go down for bed myself. And then even sometimes too, like I'll wake up in the morning and I will do some work. I'll work when the kids are sleeping, like, or when they're napping. Obviously they're sleeping right now too, but like, you get what I'm saying, where it's like I'm totally working in the nooks and crannies. And there are certain times a day too where like my toddler, she plays better by herself, and like maybe my baby is sleeping on me and like I'm baby wearing, and like I have the opportunity to like sneak into my office for a little bit. Like they're totally like I'm again not I am living the working your business in the nooks and crannies of your life right now. Like that is my current season. I shouldn't say season. That's I'm not really in a season. That is my current period of time over these next 6 days slash my past 4 days without having my husband around. And so it is totally possible. It is really just about being intentional with how you're working and where you're spending that time working. So I hope that this has been eye-opening. I hope that it was interesting in just hearing about, navigating entrepreneurship and marriage and what that dynamic looks like for me, as well as just giving some of those examples of clients that I worked with and friends that I have talked to as well, where it just looks different for every single person, and there's no right or wrong answer there. And what you might be navigating right now is not necessarily what's going to be, the dynamic for your entrepreneurship and your marriage, and in even 3 or 5 years from now. Because I know for a fact that mine has been so different from year one in business, year two in business, year three in business, now year four in business. And I know that, as we have our next kid, and like, if Gabe does decide to start a business, like it's going to change so much, and like the ebbs and flows, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is just entrepreneurship at the end of the day. But if you have any questions about navigating our roles, and just what that has looked like, and how I would like the questions to ask yourself, if you are in a season where like, does it make sense for me to get support, or just all of the good stuff. All that being said, I'm going to close off this episode before I keep rambling. Tune into next week's episode where I talk more about why I decided to bring back the podcast and all of that juiciness.